Would you like to know what it's like to live in Florence, Italy? Today we will find out. We have our special guest, Tom Leonard, and let me tell you a little bit about Tom. Tom is the creator and host of the Gamers Change Lives podcast, a platform dedicated to exploring the business side of exports and its potential to drive economic opportunities worldwide. With a social and online marketing management background, he has worked with major entertainment companies like Warner Brothers and Netflix, specializing in digital media production, content development, and audience engagement. Now based in Florence, Italy, Tom is not retired, but is actively working with the startup Life Gateway, applying his expertise in digital strategy and media to help shape innovative solutions in the industry. Originally from Wyoming in the Rocky Mountains, Tom has spent most of his adult life in Southern California, where he built a career at the intersection of entertainment, technology, and marketing. Before entering the business world, he served in the Peace Corps in Fiji, an experience that shaped his global perspective and commitment to fostering connections across cultures. After returning to the US, he earned his MBA from Stanford Graduate School of Business, further owning his leadership, strategy, and entrepreneurship skills. Now living in Monterinaldi in the hills of Florence, I hope I pronounced that right, Tom embraces life as an American in Italy. While improving his Italian, he immerses himself in the country's rich culinary traditions, eager to deepen his knowledge of Italian cooking and wine. Whether exploring local markets, learning classic recipes, or discovering hidden wineries, he enjoys the opportunity to experience Italy through its food and culture. As he continues his professional journey, he remains focused on storytelling, digital marketing, and fostering international connections in gaming, exports, and emerging technologies. Welcome, Tom. Welcome to the podcast. Thank you so much for coming.
Oh no, thanks.
And,
Thanks for the invitation. This is great.
and Tom and I know each other from the podcast industry for, well, I guess it's probably over 2 years now. And Tom was instrumental in answering a few questions when I first started out doing the podcast. So I want to thank him for that as well. So, Tom, tell us a little bit about yourself. What brought you to Florence, Italy?
I wish I had a really good story because I get asked that. I was asked that a lot, before I came, and certainly once I'm here. It just seemed like the right thing to do. I just wanted a new adventure. It was that time in my life. My parents had recently passed away, so I didn't have any caregiving duties that would keep me in California. And I thought, hey, it's time to do something while I still can. Get out there and do something different. I also don't have a really good story on why Florence, Italy. I was uncharacteristically decisive about things. I always liked Italy, but I don't have any Italian heritage or anything like that. But I just really liked the history and everything here in Florence, in Italy in particular. And so last October, not like 6 months ago, but like 18 months ago, I came here to Florence for 4 weeks, for a month, to see if it was something that I wanted to do. And I spent 4 weeks here and 2 weeks in Rome. I was like, wow, I can live here. It's like, okay, let's see how we can make that happen. And so as soon as I still remember flying back after that trip, flying back into Burbank. And it was just like, I want to be back in Italy. It just felt right for whatever reason. So, and a lot of people that I talk to, and a lot of people in your groups will talk about, doing a lot of investigation for different countries and different regions and things like that. And I was just like, no, I want to live in Florence. And so which was very fortunate for me, because then I didn't have to spend a lot of time, deciding where it is that I wanted to be. I'm single, so I don't have another person that I have to negotiate with on anything. So I just thought this would be a good adventure to do.
You just did it. So just like Nike says, just do it. And you did it.
The other thing is, the one thing that I do miss in moving to Italy is being able to tell people that I'm moving to Italy. Because in California, you tell people you're moving to Italy, they're like, oh, well, first they don't believe it, but then they're like, oh, that just sounds
Really good.
so great for all kinds of reasons. And it wasn't, with everything that's going on, it wasn't like, oh, I can't live here anymore, sort of thing. It wasn't me leaving something I didn't like. I really like California. I like Berlin. But going someplace that I wanted to be. I was running towards something, not running away from something.
There you go. That's very important. So I'm glad that happened. And yeah, you did save an awful lot of time researching other places because, sometimes you just get that feeling that it's a right thing to do.
Yes.
So, okay.
And
So
the other thing that I also discovered along the way, and I was talking to some other expats here today about it, in fact, when you do something like this, it gives you a feeling of empowerment in a way that it's hard to describe. And it's something you don't really, or I never really anticipated going into it, because it's like the trainer at the gym. I was like, oh, here's what I look like 20 years ago. Can you make me look like that again? And he's like, well, it's going to take some work. And I'm like, you're talking to someone that's moving to Italy. It's like, if I can do that, I can do anything. So it gives people, and it's not just moving to Italy, but anyone that's moving anywhere, that's taking a positive step, doing something with their life, it gives you power you probably don't appreciate that you're going to get.
that's great. That's great. I'm moving. Well, I hope so. So, okay. All right. So now that you're in Florence, let's talk a little bit about Florence. Tell us about the climate. What's the weather like year round in Florence?
If we had this conversation a week ago, I would have a different answer. The climate here is pretty much the same as California. It's colder in the winter. There's more rain, and the summers can be super hot around here. But just last week, not to date the podcast, but we had really big floods here in Tuscany. And I mean, pictures of the Arno River, it's like way up, down at Pisa, way up. It's like scary levels of water. Now, I live up in the hills, so it didn't really impact where I'm living or anything, but it's like, it kind of reminds you that, wow, things
Happen.
can be different that way. But overall, the one thing here I do remember, and especially if you're moving to anywhere near Wyoming, it's the wind, because you don't get the wind in California, and you get wind here, el vento. And it's just something that takes a little bit of getting used to. That's a small thing. But overall, I can't complain about the weather.
So, as far as the climate is concerned, what's the temperature like in the summer, in the winter months?
In the summer, it gets up to 40 degrees. The other thing, I've changed over to Celsius because it's easier to do. So it gets up to around 100 degrees Fahrenheit.
That's
here.
pretty warm.
It gets warm and it's a little muggy, and you kind of plan your day around it. In August in particular, which is one of the reasons why, and it makes a lot of sense, everything closes here in August. And people think like, oh, that's a myth that it doesn't. But it does. I mean, not for the full month, but you can't get anything out of the government for the month of August. It does not happen. I couldn't get a notary to complete the sale of the purchase of my house here because there's no notaries in the month of August, sort of thing. So it's that was, and I kept thinking, I want to live someplace where everyone takes off in the month of August. So everyone here goes to the sea, they call it. So they go to the beaches and outside of Florence. So Florence it's really taken over by tourists in the month of August. So yeah, so when summers are really, and then here in winter it would get down to, well, I guess it would get down to 0 degrees centigrade, so what, 32?
32.
So it'd get in the 30s, but not much cooler than that. Never really snows around here, so it's not that. And a lot of rain, but you just kind of deal with it. The weather is, again.
Every place has its thing, except for like,
yes,
here in Phoenix, it's the same thing all summer long. It's quite warm, so we have to do things that other people don't, like walk the dog at 5 in the morning and get all your stuff done early in the morning because you can't go out in 120 degrees. So okay, so you did mention that Florence has extreme weather such as flooding or the areas near there. Um, so that's a concern with climate change. Do you know if the government has done anything?
But
Um,
governments in Europe, I've discovered in general, take it so much more seriously
oh,
than
they do.
than in the US. I mean, sustainability is something that everyone does here. I mean, it's part of business planning, and it's not something that is like political or anything. It's like, no, it's just it's the smart thing to do.
The way it
And
should be.
it's just and so it's really refreshing. Recycling. Oh my God. It's like you sort all of your trash into about 5 different categories, and you look at the calendar. What's today? And then you put it out in front of the house, and it's like carta, papers one day, plastics another day, glass you take down to a place. I mean, so recycling is very much part of the culture here, and people just do it. They don't complain about it. It's
So,
a way of life.
so they actually recycle stuff, unlike places in the US where you put stuff in recycle and it doesn't wind up recycled.
Exactly. Exactly.
Okay, good to know. Good to know. Okay. I know in Spain, they have these recycling containers built into the sidewalk. Do they have that in Italy?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you rarely see a trash can. I mean, it's like something that has like 4 different holes in it so that you need to make a decision on what it is that you're going to, where you're going to put it. And yeah, and that's the other thing. I mean, people really take it seriously. I mean, no one's forcing you to divide things up, but they do.
Okay. So, do they have like options for enjoying nature, parks, hiking? I know you said beaches are a couple of hours away, right? So, is Florence, tell us about the geography too.
Here,
Where is Florence located?
and that's another reason that I like living here. It's very centrally located in Italy. One of the things that it makes people know about it, but it really puts it into perspective when you're here. Italy is about the size of California when it comes to land mass, and I think there's a few more people, but the regions are so different. You go up to Milan, and Milan is like Germany. I mean, it has that, the northern Italy has that. You have Venice, which is its own animal over on the northeast. And then you have the valley in between there. And then over here in Tuscany, it's like a different culture, different way of life. Go down to Rome, then go to Napoli, go down to Naples, and it's like a whole different culture. And then you go down to Sicily, it's like a completely different culture, which is really fascinating because you can't get bored. It's like, let's say if you moved to Nebraska, you'd have to drive a long way before you saw something that didn't look like Nebraska. Where here, it's just, and the other thing is, people here are so proud of where they're from. I mean, when you talk to people, they're proud they're from Florence. They're proud they're from Empoli. They're proud they're from Milan, and so on. And the same thing with food. Food is different from what you go 20 miles, 20 kilometers away. The food is different. I mean, every region has their own food that is not native, but more popular. So you can have all kinds of different food just and all the food here is anyone that tells you about how great the food is in Italy, it's like it's even better. It's just amazing. Because also when you're talking about sustainability, it's like the produce here, the food in general is just the quality is incredible. I mean, you cannot. So in California, I'd go to the supermarket and I'd buy produce and I'd leave it in the refrigerator for a week, 2 weeks. I mean, the tomato would still look like it did. I mean, here you don't do that. I mean, 3 days and you're not going to be eating it. So you buy things differently, but just the quality of the food is just tremendous.
Okay, I have to know. How do you keep the weight off? Get it.
That's why I've got the camera pointed up here. No,
These
well,
great pastas and
well, a couple of things. One of the things that I've learned is that portions here are smaller. I mean, there's no such thing as supersized anything. I mean, you go
right.
and it's like, no, you get lasagna and it's just a little bit of lasagna. And that's how people eat. They eat in smaller portions. But also, because the quality of the food is so much better, it doesn't stay with you the same way that, say, maybe junk food stays with you. The other thing is you do a lot of walking. I mean, you don't, you just, it's just part of life here.
Yeah.
Everyone does their share of walking, and certainly you do it in Florence, but even in other parts of the country, people don't even think twice about walking a certain distance. I mean, it's not like California where you got to have your car to drive over to
A block away.
CVS. Yeah. It's like, no, you don't do it. So that, because otherwise, so when you come here, you kind of have to control yourself a little bit because,
I would have to, because it's hard for me to control myself here. And the
well,
food's not that great.
Well, the same thing is like with breakfast. The Italian breakfast is you go to a bar, you go to a cafe, and you have a little tiny cup of espresso. I mean, little tiny with a croissant. That's breakfast. Okay. It's like sign me up. It's like if I can have that for breakfast, I want to do that.
Spain's that too. It's the cafe culture type. They don't have these humongous breakfasts with pancakes and syrup, and it's just maybe a churro with dipped in chocolate, but or a croissant. But yeah, I get you. So, do you have like parks near you and any place for recreation?
Yeah, because I live just north of Florence in the hills to get out of the heat of the summer. Hopefully, I haven't been in the place here for the summer, but it's kind of out of the city a little bit. So there's lots of places to go and to be out in nature. It's just fun to go out and see things like that.
Cool. Very cool. Okay, let's get into the cost of living. Now, this is going to be interesting because you come from California. It's pretty pricey there. How would you compare that to Florence as far as groceries and housing?
For housing, one of the things that I find, because I keep talking about, this is my experience. I mean, other people might have a different experience, but from what I've seen is that housing can be really expensive. People here, I think Italy has the highest home ownership rate in all of Europe. More people here own their homes than anywhere else because they're passed down in the family from generation to generation, sort of thing. So it's kind of a joke. People live with their parents way longer than you might do in other parts of the world. So they'll hand down their houses, but houses here are much less expensive than I mean, California is kind of at this one extreme. So the housing rents, but also it also depends on what part of Italy you live in. So I live in Florence. It's one of the more expensive places. It's not as expensive as Milan. Milan is like a whole new world of hurt when it comes to cost of housing. So it's a little more expensive, and it's certainly more expensive the closer to the city center that you live. You can live outside of the city a little bit and live in a place that's much less expensive. And for me, I didn't want to live, because if you really want to live out in the country, you can find some pretty reasonable places out there that are really nice, and they're in the Tuscan. They're in Tuscany, and it's like it looks as good as you expect it to look. There's kind of a couple of myths. There's the €1 home that they're always like, oh, you can buy a home for €1. It's like, you do not want to live. You do not want to buy. You do not want this particular house.
Running water or a toilet.
Yeah. I mean, the renovations are going to be astronomical.
So tell us what an average price for, let's say, a 2-bedroom, 2-bath home in Florence would be. Do you have any idea?
If you're going to live in the city itself, you're probably looking at 500,000. Or 500,000. And again, it's one of the things I always recommend people do: go out and look on the real estate sites. That's where you're going to get the real information. And the real estate listings some are great, and most are just crap. So you have to kind of weed through things. The other thing I learned, when you go and look at real estate online, which I really like to do, never put your name in with any of the sites that you go to. Because what happens is when you buy a house in Italy, you as the buyer pay 3%, the seller pays 3% to their agent. So each one has an agent. If you're a buyer and you go to these sites and you're like, oh, send me more information and here's my name and all this kind of stuff, some of them will come back. If you buy a place, they will say that they are your agent and they will claim another 3%. So the people that I talked to early on, they said, don't ever put your name in any database out there. So the other thing is find a good real estate person to work with. And there's a lot out there that are really good, but find one and work with them. They can work with everyone. But yeah, just go out there and poke around and look at the online listings, because you're going to find things in the city center that are different. You're also going to be able to start to learn if you're interested in Florence, you're going to learn the different neighborhoods. You're going to learn a little bit about the different areas that are outside of the city. And, if you go to the west, it's going to be less expensive and less nice than maybe to the east. I was over in Banyo Ripley a couple of weeks ago and I was like, this looks like Orange County. I mean, it had that new kind of house feel to it and everything. And so yeah, it's to poke around and look and see what works out there. Most people here live in an apartment. I mean, they own an apartment.
Right.
We probably think of it as condo, but they call it an apartment. And so that's what the majority of the people who live in the city. If you live in Florence, you don't have a house with a yard and a fence. It's like, no,
you have an apartment
any more than you do in San Francisco.
Do you recommend people rent before buying for, like, let's say a year?
It's hard for me to give that advice because for me,
you didn't.
Because I wanted to buy something. I knew I wanted to buy something, so I didn't want to. And again, it's like if you want to spend the time to do that, but I guess at the same time, buying is a pretty big step, because the house that I had in Burbank, I sold in 3 days. I mean, because that's the market in California and maybe in Phoenix as well. It's like, but it moves fast in different places. Here, in the price range that I'm looking at, things will be on the market for 2 years. So it's like, and that was not, at all kinds of price ranges. So if you're thinking you're going to, I'll buy something, then we sell it in a year or something, it's like, well, no, that's not going to happen. So yeah, if you're a little bit unsure about the area, yeah, rent and see how it fits for you there.
Okay, good advice. So, how about an average rental? What do you think it would cost? Do you have any idea at all?
I don't have a really good idea, but I would picture. The other thing in Italy, the wages, the salaries are unbelievably low. I mean, it's just incredible how little people make here. And it's, even college graduates, I mean, they're making, in jobs in California, they might be making, $100,000. Here, they're making 25,000 euros. I mean, the wages are really low. So that means that housing prices are also, rent and everything also has to be lower along those lines. So I don't have a really good figure for you. And again, go out online and poke around, but it's also going to really depend on what part of town you're in. It'd be the same thing if you're looking in LA. I mean, what's an average price in LA? Well,
okay.
But the cost of other things like utilities are a little bit cheaper. Oh, but some things, I mean, gas and electric are a little bit cheaper, but not tremendously so. Gas, because of Russia, is significantly more expensive than it used to be here. But things like internet. I mean, I have an unlimited plan for, internet, TV, everything. It's 29 euros a month.
I hear that too.
And
it seems like everywhere in Europe.
So my phone, I needed an Italian phone because there are a lot of apps in Italy that don't work on an American-based phone. So I had to get another phone. But it's like 5 euros a month for a separate phone line. It's like,
crazy.
So that kind of stuff is really, food can also be pasta. It's funny, you go to the store and you can buy pasta for almost nothing. You buy this thing of pasta for a euro.
It's like wine
is like, you buy €3 bottle of wine and you think, that must be real crap.
But it's really good wine.
It's like, it's the top, it's like the wine.
Right, plus the crap is 50 cents.
yeah, yeah. And you go to the store and the 20 euro bottles are locked up. You can't get to them.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
but so there are certain things. So the cost of that, the cost of transportation, riding around on the bus, things like that is pretty reasonable as well.
So,
Gasoline is probably a little expensive, although I have an all electric car, so I'm not a great judge of that. But I don't think gasoline is cheap anywhere in Europe.
so do you think retirees could live comfortably in Florence on a moderate budget?
It would be tough, I think.
You think so?
What I would recommend is look at places near Florence. Because again, the transportation, the trains, I was in Rovigo. Oh, I was up there visiting a previous guest on your podcast, Dan Rainey, and his partner and other people that he knows up there. I was up in Rovigo today and just took the train back.
Today? How far is it?
A couple 100 kilometers.
Oh, which is how many miles?
140.
Not too bad. It's
a
trip.
But the trains here are just phenomenal. Not only are they fast, if you buy your tickets in advance, they can be really inexpensive. I mean, the last minute ones are not so much, but the train stations are like right in the middle of the town where they should be. So you just go right there. There's no security. You walk in, get on the train, and it really is high-speed train. I mean, it's like, boom. And
How long does it take you to get to Rovigo? Let's say it's 150 miles and 60 miles.
Oh, an hour and 15 minutes?
It's pretty good.
I mean, you're looking at the place. Oh, you're going 260 kilometers an hour on these trains. I mean, who knows what that is? But it's just, it works out really well.
It's a bullet train.
It really is. It really is. And I'm going to Rome in a couple of weeks, and it's like another hour and a half, maybe a little more to go to Rome. But there's like a train every half hour.
That's
I mean, it just works. I go to Milan, a couple of hours to Milan. So it works out really well.
How about the tax situation? So
what I always tell people is all these people on your Facebook groups and other Facebook groups are asking for tax advice. And I'm always like, no, do not get your tax advice from Facebook. No. The only thing you should be asking there is, do you know a good tax professional that I can talk to? That's the appropriate. But all these people, it's like, well, it's kind of interesting to hear what other people's have been.
So, do you know if you pay Italian taxes first?
Yes. So what happens is, because I arrived here at the end of July last year with the intention I was not going to be in Italy for 180 days. So I was not. I am not a tax citizen for last year. This year, of course, I will be a tax citizen. But what basically happens is, the way I understand it, and I'm not a tax advisor, but basically you pay tax in the U.S. taxes on worldwide income. Italy taxes on worldwide income.
Right.
But what happens is then you then get an offset for what you pay. So let's say if you're paying in the U.S. and I'm making this up, it's like 20%. Let's say if that's what you're paying in Italy, if you earn over 50,000 euros, which you're probably going to do, because they're going to take 53% of that. So you need 100,000 euros to live on 50,000 euros. So, but at the same time, you get free healthcare. So it's like, okay, this kind of
a trade-off.
Yeah, I mean, to me, that's the big trade-off there. So yeah, taxes, you need a professional, but basically you're not going to be double taxed. You're not going to pay taxes in Italy and tax in the US. Italy also has, though, this thing called a wealth tax. So you also end up paying a certain point. And again, I'm not exactly sure what the number is, but like 0.04% of
over a certain amount.
Everything that you own to the government, which is something that we don't have in the US.
Okay. So in other words, your Italian taxes typically are going to be more than US taxes. So when you pay your Italian taxes, you're going to wind up paying nothing in US taxes because you've already paid more than the US wants. But the US, you don't get healthcare, you don't get all the services that the EU provides.
Yes.
Gotcha. Okay, Tom. So let's talk now about the visa and residency process. What types of visas are available to retirees or expats moving to Italy?
One thing I would recommend is to go out there and do your own research to see what is out there, because I came in under an investor's visa because I had no other, I don't have Italian heritage or anything like that to get citizenship. And I didn't want to retire, so I didn't want a retirement visa. So that there are different versions out there. I'm not the expert, and so you don't want to take it from me on what's out there, unless you want to talk about the investor's visa.
I
And I
do.
do know about that because the way it works for Italy, and it works differently in different countries, but if you invest 250,000 euros in an Italian startup, then you can get a visa that is good for 2 years, renewable for 3. And so that's the route that I went through. So what you do is, if you go down that route, then you find a startup that you want to invest in. And then once you make that selection and they meet all the criteria that the government puts in place, then you get what's called a nulla osta, which is your app. And it's the same for every kind of visa. It's your approval for getting your visa. You can then go to the Italian consulate in wherever it is that you live. And you can't go to just any consulate. You have to make sure that you go to the one that is designated for where you live in the US. The other thing that's really interesting in Italy is at the consulates, but really throughout Italy, is each governmental organization kind of sets their own rules. So what works here in Florence doesn't necessarily work in Rovigo, doesn't work in Milan, doesn't work in Rome. Exactly. So even though I could tell you this is exactly how it worked for me, it doesn't mean that it's necessarily going to work for you when you go to the consulate. Because so I went to the consulate there in Los Angeles on the west side, and it took forever to get an appointment there. So it took I was going for the visa in June. So I started the process of getting the background checks, all of that approved in January. So by June, I had the permission to go get the visa. So I went to the consulate there. And what I found worked for me is I just started showing up. I mean, I just went to the west side and I got to know the guy at the guard at the front desk. And I was just really friendly and just asking him. And pretty soon he was giving me hints on how to make things work. And then I finally got in there and then was able to leave on the 24th of July. So, but what happens then is, so you get into Italy with your visa. So I have a visa that's good for 2 years in my passport. And then when you get into the country, you have 8 days to register with the Comune. So no, that's not the Comune. It's the Questora. It's the police department. So you have 8 days. You have to register that, hey, I want to become a resident of Florence. Same thing anywhere in Italy. And then that's when I got hit with the August delay. It's like nothing happened in the month of August. I finally got it in September. And then after you get that, you get your permesso di soggiorno. And that's at the next level. And then what you need to get is a residency card. And the residency card is done by the Comune. It's done by the city of Florence. So went in and got that. And that was a pretty quick turnaround. The city of Florence, so good to work with. The Questora, the police department, it was the nightmare that you always hear about with bureaucracy. But, it is what it is. And then after that, a few weeks later, I got my health card. And so the way it works with health cards here is that with certain types of visas, and again, I'm not the expert here, but certain types of visas, you have to pay like 2,000 euros a year or some amount in that range for your health card. But if you have an investor's visa, because they know you're going to be paying taxes, they're like, it's free, but you get to pay taxes out there. But the thing that the real story here is that it's going to work differently every time you work with a different part of the government, because what works here in Florence doesn't necessarily work that way in Rovigo. So, but to me, it's part of the adventure. I mean, if I wanted things to be cut and dried, if you have if it really, if you can't stand that kind of ambiguity about things, it's going to be tough, because you're going to go and you're going to get a different answer when you ask a different person The
Same
same
question.
question. So it's, or even the same person, the same question. It's like, so, but to me, it's part of the
That's
adventure.
part of the
It doesn't
process.
bother me, so I don't look at it that way. People here,
So
Dan was always giving me a hard time. It's like, you always said have such a positive attitude. Because I always say it'll work out. It will. It always does. So, but yes, you have to be prepared to deal with things. Then I wanted to buy a car. So the other trick here is in Italy, if you're an American and you come into Italy, you don't just turn in your driver's license for an Italian driver's license, even if you've been driving forever. So I have to go start as if I was 18 years old. I have to go take the written test in Italian. And then I have to get the little P on the back of my car. And then I have to get 6 hours of supervised driving. And I've got a year to do this after I'm a resident. I can drive for a year on my international license and so on. So I'll need to do that. And then as a new driver, you can only drive an underpowered car. So you have to have like a clown car for 3 years. So, but there's a little loophole. If you get an all electric car, you can get a more powerful one. So that's what I did. I bought an all electric car, a DS Citroen model, and which I really like. It works out really well. So the other thing that I learned, we'll probably talk about speaking Italian, but
save that thought. Well, let's go back. Oops.
see,
Let's go back to the visa thing. So
yes,
your visa was like a golden visa, correct?
exactly.
Okay. So that's the type of visa that you could purchase for a certain amount of money, correct?
Yes, and then if you
Criteria.
pass the background check, which most people should be able to.
Okay. And do you know if there's a retirement visa offhand?
There is. There is one out there. But that's the other thing that I wanted to do is I wanted to be able to work in Italy.
Okay.
And so I didn't want to go down the retirement route because I want to be able to legally work here. And with an investor visa, I can do that.
So how long did the whole process take you?
Yes, 6 months.
It's not too bad.
Oh, it was. But one of the things that I did is I had an agency help me because I'm a big believer in it's like I don't want to have this great core competency on how to move to Italy. It's like there's other people that have been down this road before many times, so why not tap into them? And so yes. I hired a company called Smart Move Italy. There's others out there. I really like them. They did an incredible job because their attitude is actually owned by 2 Canadians who live here in Florence, and then all the people that work there are Italian. But their philosophy was always like, anything that would come up, okay, how do we deal with it? How do we fix it? It wasn't like, no drama. It was just go down this road sort of thing. They also were my real estate agent for when I bought my house.
Gotcha. Okay.
So I'm a big believer in hiring.
Yeah, definitely, help. Especially in a foreign country. You don't know the laws, so it's really important to hire somebody that could help you do that. Okay, so 6 months wasn't too bad. I wonder if it takes longer for different types of visas, but we don't know that. So,
well, I do know that if you're going for citizenship based on family ties, it can take a long time. I mean, that seems to be the one that people take years to get.
Does your visa provide for a roadmap or a road to citizenship after a certain amount of years?
Because after 5 years, I can become a resident.
Okay.
It's a different level of residency than what I have right now. But yes, then after
like
that,
a permanent resident.
5 years of being the permanent resident, maybe that's the term, is then I can apply for citizenship to have the dual citizenship.
Okay, good. All right, let's roll right along to the LGBTQ community and inclusivity. Tell us a little bit about the LGBTQ community. I know Italy in itself doesn't have same-sex marriage, so they won't marry you, although they will honor your marriage if you were married somewhere else. So yes. Tell us a little bit about that. Tell us a little bit about Florence itself. Does it have a gay community?
Surprisingly, it doesn't. I mean, not a very active one. I mean, certainly there's not a gay neighborhood. I mean, like you would find in most cities in the U.S. I mean, it's even Rome. The gay neighborhood was pretty sparse.
Mhm.
So I mean, it's gay friendly. I mean, people, you never, I have never felt, like that was a problem. Certainly the people at the agency, anyway, it's like, I tell them what the deal is. And I've never had any negative reaction that I can think of really anywhere. But at the same time, they're not gay bars. There's not, community centers. There's a gay pride that's coming up in Prado in June that I will be interested to see what that's like. I've also discovered it's strange here, but Sundays are like gay day in Florence. And it's like you will see guys holding hands, guys kissing out in public that you would never see the other days.
That's
And
weird.
there are bars because there's this one bar. So I walked by on Sunday night. I was like, whoa, that's a bear bar there. That's a gay bar. And so I thought, that's great. So I went down the next night because I thought, it's like, nope, it was just
It
that one
wasn't
night,
there.
just on Sunday.
So
So
Sundays must be their gay bar night.
yes. And so, but a lot of it is also deals with the Catholic Church. In the
Yes.
Catholic Church, I still have yet to find anyone that goes to church. I mean, everyone's, religious, but they don't go to church. But the Catholic Church has tremendous sway in what happens in Italy. So, and that's why the marriage, you can't get married here. It's because the church does not want that to happen, sort of thing.
So apparently that didn't sway your position as far as moving to a place that wasn't totally LGBTQ friendly.
Yeah, because some people would be like, oh, the prime minister or the premier president, I don't know what her exact title is very left, very right oriented, let's say. She was the only European leader at the president's inauguration this year. I mean, she's in well with the current administration out there. But what I tell people is, I don't have a dog in this hunt. It's like, I'm not here to be political. It's going to impact certain things, but I don't worry about what the politics of Italy are at the moment, because the other thing that you find here is that politics change really much more often than you would have thought that it does in other parts of the world out there. So no, it did not. That was not a factor for me.
Okay, and people don't feel uncomfortable living there
No,
if they're
any couple, whether married or not, that are here, I've never heard anyone say that there was ever any issue of them being a married couple being able to do things, in the community, in the government, that was an issue.
okay. Let's go on to healthcare and medical services. Tell us, how's the healthcare? Is there a hospital close to you? Can you walk to the hospital? What options do they have to have private versus public healthcare?
The healthcare here is amazing. And I'm saying that from a little bit of personal experience, but everything that I've heard from everyone else, all the other expats that have been here, because like I said, once I became a resident with my residency card, I could apply for a health card, and the health card is, for free healthcare. And I go to the doctor 6 minutes away here, closer than Kaiser was to me in California, is Correggi, and it is often rated the number one hospital in all of Italy. So, and it's a huge complex, and the people over there, my doctor there speaks English, and I feel really good about having him as my doctor for any kind of medical issue that would ever come up. And prescriptions are free for anything. So, and they just, once you're in the system. Now, there's a bit of a strange thing with public versus private. You can, if you're public, some elective things like elective surgery might take a little bit longer than you would want it to take. But what you do is then you go the private route, which is actually what it means is you just pay a little bit and then you get an earlier appointment. Now, when you pay a little bit, you pay like 60 €80. I mean, it's
A month.
inconsequential. No, no, just for that one thing. If there's a certain surgery you
Oh,
want,
so you pay it out of pocket?
yes, yes, and it's the same
Okay.
doctor that would have done it private, public, but you just get it done earlier. So, which most people, if it's something that you feel is really urgent, you can do that. So,
Can you get private insurance?
you
So,
wouldn't want it. I mean, because if you get your health card, that covers everything. So the only time that you would look at private is for a particular event, a particular
okay.
procedure that you will then, they call it private, but it's like you're paying to get an earlier appointment, basically, is what's happening there. But the quality of the care that you get here is just as good as you're going to get, I think. And from what other people have told me in the US.
You so you said you're close by to the hospital, and you have English speaking doctors, and we didn't really get into language yet. Has that been a barrier? And especially in the healthcare industry. So you have all of your doctors, do they speak English? Is there a problem in translation or?
So I went to get my doctor, to get my health card. And so you go in there, and my attorney was with me because she was helping me out. And so, so here's your health card. And here's a list. They hand you this dog-eared list. It would be mimeographed if there was such a thing anymore, of all the doctors that you could have. Oh, pick a doctor. And so I picked the one that had an Indian name because I thought there's a better chance he's going to be able to speak English than the others. Because one of the things that I find here is that people do not speak English. It's like people do speak English in the tourist areas, maybe, but the level of proficiency is surprisingly less than I would have anticipated. I think of that as also a good thing because I want to learn Italian and I want to be able to have a more Italian experience here. And part of that will be, to be able to speak Italian. But certainly any of the making appointments at the doctor and things like that, buying the car, I must have been the first American that Brandini, this huge dealership, ever sold a car to because no one spoke English there. My neighbors, very friendly, super friendly, but they don't speak English. So what I've learned to do is I've found people who can be translators for me and just get friends of friends. People here are just friendly. It's like, okay, do you know someone that can go with me to go buy my car, to do the translation? Oh yeah, my cousin or my sister's boyfriend doesn't have a job. So yeah, he can go with, and they're more than happy to do that. And you find people,
Good.
because my philosophy is if it's something that's important, get it translated. They're working on the gas, turning on the gas here at
Oh
the
yeah.
house. And I
Yeah.
was like,
We
no,
need somebody.
we're going to have someone here that can understand exactly what needs to be done.
Yeah, Google Translate just doesn't go that far.
No.
So, okay. All right. So, okay, wrapping up on the healthcare. So that seems like so the personal experiences were good, doctors were good, hospitals are close, and good healthcare. So that's
Yes.
great. All right. So again, we're back to transportation and walkability. We touched upon that. You touched upon the bullet trains that Florence has. Is everything, can you describe, is everything walkable? So can you walk to
Florence,
the store?
Florence is so unique. And where I live, I can't because I just live far enough. Yeah, I live like 6 kilometers from the city center. So that's why I wanted a car. And so, to be able to go down. But when you get into the city itself, it's like you can't drive in the city. You have to walk. So Florence is unbelievably walkable. I mean, you walk a lot, but it's, to me, just interesting. I mean, you want to be walking. So it's not like a chore. It's like an adventure.
So you can walk to the butcher, the baker, the candlestick
Yep.
maker, the
Yes.
pharmacy,
Yes.
and everything. The big, whatever you
Yes.
needed, the town cobbler. uh,
Yes.
okay. So and the bank and all that good
Yes.
stuff. Oh, that's perfect. And it keeps the weight down too, like we
Yes,
mentioned
it
before.
helps. It helps.
Okay. And you mentioned also that they have the train in the middle of the town, right? That
Yes,
could take you to other places within Italy.
yes,
Does it
yeah,
go
yeah,
to any other countries?
yeah. You can go anywhere in Europe
Wow.
on it. I mean, they just had the new overnight train from Milan to Paris. They brought that back, so it's like, yeah, you can get on the train, and the train is just such a pleasant experience. Big seats. They
It's
give you
better than
food.
flying.
Yeah, but people do fly because it can be dirt cheap to fly.
And
People
where's
will
the
be
airport?
There's an airport here in Florence that is actually just out by the hospital. It's really close. There's not as many flights out of there. Most people here will go to Bologna or to Pisa. The airports there are bigger, but there's all these little airlines. Wizz Air, one of my favorite names, this Hungarian airline. But you get, what is it? Skyscanner is the app that
Hmm.
you look
Yeah.
at, and you can get €6 flights to Albania.
Wow.
It's like it can be, well, if you want to go to,
Albania. Yeah.
yeah, it's like, but you can also fly uh yeah, a little bit. If you're going to go to Paris, you're going to fly. If you're going to go to Scotland, you're going to fly. Uh
So
and it's certainly doable.
transportation is pretty good for you. So you could,
Yes.
the airport's there, the trains are there, and yeah, and it's walkable. So that's great. Okay. How about arts and culture? I have to have my arts and culture fix every now and then.
Well,
And then,
then you need to come visit, because this is art and culture on steroids. It's just, the museums here are just, I mean, they're world class. I mean, that's not necessarily a surprise, but they are so good. And one of the things that you do, if you're a resident, you can get into a lot of them for free. So, and also, you start to figure out when they're not as busy. You're not going to go in the middle of the summer, but other times of the year, and you go Tuesday nights, they're open late. A lot of the museums, and so for residents. But I mean, to me, that's one of the reasons to be here. I bought last year. I bought an annual pass for the Uffizi Museum. So Boboli Palace, Uffizi Museum. You just go in there anytime that you want. It's like you get a 3-day pass for $36 or an annual pass for 72. So it's like €72. So it's like, geez, I used to go to the Uffizi to use the restroom because it was just so handy. And so and there was always some event going on.
is
I
there
mean,
any
jazz festivals.
translations?
Sorry?
Any translation, like if you're looking at art or you're in a museum and they have something written, what it is, what the exhibit is, I'm sure it's all in Italian. Can you
The really big museums are
in
in
English?
English as well, because
Interesting.
so many of the tourists
Interesting.
that show up. Or if you go like up to Verona, everything's in German.
Hmm. How
So
about theater? Is that a challenge?
that would be a little bit of a challenge. I'm not a huge theater person, but it would be all in Italian. Movie theaters, you don't have English movies here. I
They're not
mean,
dubbed.
anything that's, if you go to the Cineplex, you're going to be watching a movie that's dubbed into Italian with no subtitles. So it's just,
Oh,
which is good for learning Italian. But I watch a lot of
right.
cartoons in the cooking channel for Italian.
Yeah, that's a good way to learn. All right. Excellent. So lots of arts and culture going on in Florence as well. Okay. Do you know of any LGBTQ groups that might host social events, or is there such a thing?
Not that I have found.
Okay.
And to be honest, I haven't spent a whole lot of time doing it. But also, it goes back to, and one of the reasons I want to get better at Italian, any group like that would be an Italian group. And if you don't speak the language, well
Or
enough to have
or an
conversation, I definitely have not found any expat
oh,
LGBT
okay.
groups out there. Nope. No, and again, I haven't looked a lot, but I probably would have come across them if they had. And what I'll always recommend, and you're part of the reason, is get on Facebook. Use the Facebook groups. Use all of them because the people there are so helpful and so friendly, and you can learn a lot from the interaction with people there.
How about the dining and restaurant scene?
Oh God, it's like so. Yeah, so you're talking about culture, art, dining. Oh, the food here is just unbelievable.
I mean, and
So
there are
it's
many restaurants.
yes. Well, one of the things you find is there's not a lot of different kinds of restaurants. There's a lot of Italian restaurants, but there's some Mexican restaurants, there's some Chinese restaurants. A little, I'm not a huge fan of those, but the food in the Italian places is so good that no, if you were not a huge fan of Italian food, you're probably not going to enjoy it as much here because you're not going to find a Thai restaurant. You find sushi in a lot of places, all you can eat sushi places that are fun. But the food here is definitely Italian based. The Australians there's a couple of Australians that have a breakfast place that has actually eggs Benedict and real bagels. And we do go down there because it's like, whoa, this is like a little taste of
New York.
Of home.
Yeah, absolutely. So the Italian dishes are sort of similar than what we have in the US, like meatballs and lasagna and veal and stuff like that.
Definitely, yes. Yeah, pasta. You have your first course, you have your antipasta, and you have your first course, and your second course, and then pizza. Pizza is completely different here. It's really thin crust, and it's like one thing, and it's just one of the things I'm going to put on my terrace here soon is a pizza oven, and then I'm going to be really popular with all the with
people
all the
will be
bakers.
coming over.
Then because I want to be able to make that. It doesn't look as hard as it sounds, but yeah, the food would not be unfamiliar. However, there are certain things that pop up. It's like here in Florence, they really like tripa. They like tripe.
Tripe.
And it's just like, yeah, that was my, yes, if you can see his face, that's my, but they're so proud of it. Lampredotto. And I'm like, no, if you have to boil it for 3 days, I don't want to eat it, sort of thing. And then at Christmas,
a culture thing.
They have zampone, pig's feet. And I'm just like, these giant Christmas packages. I'm like, this is crazy. But for the most part, the Italian food here is going to be very identifiable and very good.
Awesome. All right, let's get into crime and safety. How safe is it in Florence? Compare that to the US. So you're in the EU, and I don't think most countries do not allow guns like the US does. So tell us a little bit about safety for the time that you've been there. Is it mainly petty crimes as opposed to violent crimes?
People here do not understand how people in the U.S. can have guns. I mean, people in the U.S. don't understand how, but it's such a surprise. They just don't comprehend so many people having guns because they don't have them here, and which I think helps. Yeah, I mean, certainly Rome. I mean, the bigger cities are going to have areas you probably don't want to be in, but that's going to be true anywhere. Not necessarily, but for the most part, I've always felt really safe here.
You feel safe walking down the street and safe walking at night?
Yeah. I mean, there are certain areas I wouldn't necessarily walk through, but I don't live near them.
Do they have a homeless issue?
They do not. And one of the reasons is because if you're homeless, there are places for you to go. And so when you talk to Italians about it and you're walking with them and you see someone that's homeless that is begging on the street, you're like, what's he doing there? There's places for him to go. He has to want to be there. So it's very, very uncommon now, petty crime though is an issue. I did have my wallet stolen on the Rome subway, which was no fun on my way to the Vatican. But the funny thing is that was last year. This year there was a store I was in, and this secondhand store in a nice part of town. And there were some people in there doing strange things. I didn't understand why they were there. And I got outside and I understood why. They had taken my wallet out of my pocket, taken all the money, and then put it back in my pocket. So, which I thought it cost me like €100, but I had all my ID and everything. I was just like, thank God they. So one of the things you do, and especially if you're identified as a foreigner, as not Italian, because Italians don't have that problem. What they'll do is they target foreigners,
Prey on
and
foreigners.
it's like you just have to be vigilant. So you do have to be vigilant. I would never have been vigilant about being pickpocketed in LA.
Okay. So, all right, and they have enough police, I'm sure, to handle any type of
They've got so many different
situation.
layers of police. Yes, the police. And one of the things is you never take pictures of the police. So I was down at the Questora to get my permesso di soggiorno, and my lawyer was already there. So I was just coming up to the building, and you know how you would do. It's like if someone's inside, you just take a picture of which entrance you're at so they would know. So I took a picture. Oh man, all these Italian, they made such a big deal. And there was a big crowd there, but they're doing it mostly for their bosses. They come over, they grab my phone. I was glad they didn't smash it, but they're deleting things off of it and everything. And I had to keep from laughing because it was so comical. But yeah, I mean that. But never really feel that they're overbearing, or that there's in certain places, certainly in Rome and in the really big tourist areas here, there will be military machine guns out there, but you do not take pictures of those people.
I will remember that.
Yes, or they will remind you very quickly.
Remember that. So let's talk about challenges and unexpected aspects. So, what are the most significant adjustments you had to make to move to Florence?
Probably having to speak Italian better is something that I didn't necessarily expect. And again, I don't think of it as a bad thing, but it's certainly it's more important that someone speaks Italian reasonably well to enjoy life here better. One of the things that I found here is that everything is on an app. Literally, I mean, I've got apps that control everything in this house. It's like way beyond what I was used to in the United States. I mean, everything is connected that way, which is really good, and for the most part works really well. So, but yeah, I mean, there haven't been any really big, never anything's like, what am I doing here? Sort of, never. I mean, I never have that.
Are you taking Italian courses?
Yes.
Or a course?
I have a tutor that I've been talking to for a long time. And I found in one app in particular that's been being helpful. I've taken some classes. I'm a big believer you do different things, because one way is not going to solve the whole thing. And what you need to do is you just need to get out there and practice. People are, I think it's a stretch to say people appreciate you making the effort. I think they would appreciate if you spoke better than you did. But certainly, I mean, the way that you do it is the way that you get better, you just get out there and do it. And that's one of the good sides of English not being so prevalent, is that you get a lot of opportunity to do that.
So let's say you had more time in making the decision whether you were moving, would you have learned or taken a course in Italian in the States before you got there? Would that
Yes.
have been?
Yes, I would encourage that. If the minute you think you might even be interested, start.
Okay. Good advice. All right. Have you made many friends? Was it easy to make friends?
It is so easy to make friends here.
Are they expat friends or locals?
Both. To me, it's really surprising. I was thinking the other day, I was watching that hokey little film on Netflix, the Villa Dolce, which is like every American's idea of how it works in Tuscany, sort of thing. And, they had the big thing at the end, where it's a wedding or something, and then all these friends showing up here. And it's just like, it's the same thing here. It's like, I know my neighbors up and down the street, and people that I work with, professionally. Oh, the other thing that is interesting here is, and every expat that I've talked to agrees, people here like to do favors for other people, not in a way that makes you feel uncomfortable, but it's very transactional. because what they want to do is they want to do favors for you so that they can come to you to get favors. And and I don't mean that in a bad way, but it's completely different than it is in other places. So it's like the guy who runs the startup that I invested in. When he showed up, when I first got here, he was like, "Oh, so what do you want to do while you're here?" And he said, "Do you need any football tickets? Do you need?" And I said, "I want to do three things. I want to go to the Ducati factory. I want to go to the Maserati factory. And I want to go to the Ferrari factory because they're here. And I just think that would be fun." He goes, "Oh, I've got you covered." He goes, "I have a really good friend that runs marketing for all of Maserati. We'll come down. We'll pick you up. We'll take you to the personal tour of Maserati." Well, as it turns out, the guy, the week before the tour, left Maserati. So we did not get to do that. But people like to do favors in those kinds of ways, which to me is good. I mean, I don't think of that as a bad thing. So yeah, making friends here, it's easier than I would have expected.
Very good. I'm glad that it works out that way. Absolutely. Okay. Do you know if there's any downsides? If there are any downsides to retiring in Florence that people should know about?
It's expensive.
Okay.
I mean, that would be the one thing. I mean, to me, I'm just so lucky to be able to live here because there's so many things going for it. I mean, I'd rather live here than anywhere else in Italy because to me, it's just that much more interesting. It's centrally located to get everywhere else. People are friendly and just like things for the house here. It's like in furnishing the house, it's the place that I bought here is 6 kilometers out of town, but it's in a community that was built by a local architect named Leonardo Ricci back in the 1950s. And so we're refurnishing the house, so with things that fit the style of the house. And I have an Italian interior designer, which they're easier to come by here.
Right.
So, but we're getting all this stuff made by local artisans. It's like these brass lamps for the bedroom, the wallpaper. I mean, we just go to these places and the carpet, the rug. I mean, they make them locally. Everything in the house will be Italian, and hopefully from Florence because you're able to do that. So yeah. But yes, it can be expensive to be here, but it doesn't have to be expensive to live in Italy. So if people are interested in living in Italy, don't shy away from finding other places in Italy to be. You've talked to other people on your podcast.
Oh yeah,
that have lived in some other places.
Yep.
So yeah, the downside here would be that it's more expensive than some other places out there. But that's about the only thing.
Okay. Now, final thoughts and advice. So, if someone is considering retiring in Florence, what advice would you give them? Any words of wisdom that you might have?
Do it.
Just go do it.
It's just. Oh, we were talking about Nike before. Just do it.
Right.
It's like no. I mean, it's like I said. It's I don't know how many times I've texted people. I'm like, this was just such the right decision for me at this time. It's like I think I know I'm just lucky in a lot of ways to be able to make it happen and so on. The other thing that was a real benefit, and it's true no matter where you might go. I got a chance to clean out a house in Burbank that I'd lived in for 30 years, and the garage was really full. And now no one has to go, when I'm no longer here, no one has to go clean out the house for Uncle Tom and take care of all that. And that was no small undertaking to make that happen. But that's another thing that gives you power. It's like, I gave away more things than anything else. I mean, I sold some things and I brought a bit. I would recommend, because a lot of people will give you advice. Oh, I just came with 4 suitcases. Great. If that works for them, more power to them. Didn't work for me. I wanted some things that meant something to me that I wanted to have around me because I do not expect. I mean, for me, and I would tell everyone there, this is a one-way trip. I'm not coming back. And again, it's not that, it's a horrible place. And it's like, no, there's so many other things that I want to be doing with the remaining years while I still can, sort of thing. So yeah. So take the opportunity to clean out your house.
Declutter.
Yes, that's a feature, not a bug for it. if someone is interested in coming to Florence, come visit. I mean, Florence is one of the cities people can understand really quickly. Is this something that is this where they want to live or not? Come and spend a little bit of time here. Travel around Italy, see if there are other places. But no, I would encourage anyone to be able to do it.
I'm going to follow up with you, of course, because we're friends anyway, and see how your journey is coming and how you're doing. And I'm just interested in what goes on in your adventure, because
No, I
it is an
appreciate
adventure.
that. It is. And one of the things I'm going to do, because I'm not quite sure what's going to happen with the podcast that I've been doing, The Gamers Change Lives, which has been great. I think I'm going to change direction and maybe do a different podcast talking more about startups in Italy, because I think there's a lot of stories to be told there that aren't told out there. But I just think there's just so many different things so many different directions to go. It's just interesting that way. And you should come visit someday.
I'd love that.
It's like, oh, that was the other thing when I bought the house here. It's like, it has 3 bedrooms. And then the real estate people are like, why does one person want to have 3 bedrooms? That's like, it's way too, it's like, I'm going to have guests.
It's like guests, and you have an office, and
Yes. So it's a different way to think. But that's also part of the fun of living in somewhere like Florence, is to be able to share it with other people that can come and experience it as well.
Well, thank you for sharing your travels, your wisdom. Thank you for helping me along my podcast journey. And
yes, if there's ever if you ever want more advice, you just let me know.
I will. Well, thanks, Tom. Thank you so much for joining us today at the podcast. It was very educational. I learned a lot, and we'll definitely keep in touch. Okay.
Great. Hey, thanks again for the opportunity.
All right. Thanks, Tom.